Hi everybody, if you're new here, we are celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and with that we're talking to a lot of women in sports here in the Twin Cities, and we have Dani Young with us right now. She's the VP of Sponsorships for the Minnesota Aurora. You know them, you love them. She's also done play-by-play for the Aurora before. Very involved in the soccer space and also the rugby space now.
Yep.
But we're going to talk to her about her career and just being around women in sports. So thanks for being here, Dani.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start by just talking about how you got into sports in your childhood and how it kind of shaped you so far.
Well, sports has just been, I think, what I grew up on. I have loved sports from day one. I took to soccer at a very young age, but my parents really tried, doing everything from like dancing, basketball. I ran track for a while, gymnastics, but soccer was like the love of my life from day one. So yeah, that's kind of where I first started with it. I have a younger brother and he also played soccer, so we both grew up like pushing each other and wanting to be the best. Colorado is where I'm from, and it's a little bit of a hotbed for soccer players and soccer talent in general. So I got really lucky to play for an amazing club and amazing coaches who used soccer to teach me a lot about what it meant to be a powerful person and to like lead and be a part of a team. And I had an amazing youth soccer team, and it was in my family. So it was just such an amazing experience. And actually my dad, he was a basketball player, and he saw me and my brother take to soccer. And so he actually got into reffing, and all of us kind of like grew up through the Colorado soccer space, him on the reffing side and then us, playing. So we kind of became this family in Colorado who just lived and breathed soccer. So that was kind of the first start in it. Both my brother and I got lucky enough to play soccer in college. I went to the University of Portland, and just knew, from a young age, like this is what I wanted to do with my life. So yeah, I got lucky enough to be one of the people that out of college, I got drafted into the previous, it was called the WPS at the time, Women's Professional League. And that league actually folded when I got drafted. So I went abroad, played for a little bit overseas, and then the current NWSL came back. And so I got picked up by the Thorns, which is in Portland, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. So, it's just, honestly, it's been what I have done from like day one.
Lived and breathed soccer.
Yes.
Like, what is anything else?
Soccer. Yes.
Tell me about how you got involved with the Aurora.
Yeah. So actually, after I was done playing, I got into coaching for a while. So I was coaching at a Division II school. I was coaching with the youth national teams. Was kind of considering if I wanted to stay in coaching really for the rest of my career. And I saw a lot of mentorship in it. And a woman that I had coached with was like, you actually should, if you are considering, and just to be clear, at the time, women's soccer players and women's coaches were not paid, very much at all. Like, it was very hard to live on that salary. So I was trying to figure out what else I was good at. The mentorship she gave me was to look at like sales. And so I actually got into medical sales. And so I kind of put like full pause on soccer and sports in general for a while, and really took a big leap into a different career path. Did that for like 5, 6, 7 years, I think. And then my partner and I moved here when we had kids. She's from here. And so that was kind of the first time when Aurora was like just getting started. I was like, I want to make some new friends. Soccer world's a very inviting place. So I started reaching out to people that I knew in the soccer world. I met with one of the founders, and he was like, you should just come on board, see what it's about. They actually talked to me about coaching, and I was like, no, I don't want to coach anymore. Yep. And so I was like, I've heard a lot of people tell the story of wanting to start a team like Aurora, and I'll be surprised when I see it go as well as it did. I went out to the first game and was just blown away by the experience, the atmosphere, the fandom, all of it. It felt very professional, and even when I was in the professional space, there were spaces that were less professional than what Minnesota Aurora had done as a semi-professional team.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I first got started in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we jump more into the Aurora, I just want to ask you, what was it like making that leap from soccer your whole life into something so different in medical skills?
Yeah, actually, it was one of the toughest learning curves in my life. That whole adjustment period of leaving sports, especially as a player, was really, really difficult because you just don't know what else you're good at. You like with teams, you automatically have a friend group, you automatically have people who with shared like time, shared space, shared mentality, and then getting into something totally new. Yeah, it was really, really tough. I actually did have an amazing boss at the time. She was, her name was Brenna, and she took me under her wing, and I will say she was one of the best coaches, and a lot of the success I've had in my life, I still think back to like that one opportunity, because she challenged me and pushed me in ways that I had never been challenged before. It really was like use your brain in a different way, and gave me a lot of structure and feedback that I really needed. And quite honestly, it was kind of harsh at times, but like it was needed. And so I actually attribute a lot of my success to her and to that one opportunity.
Wow. Thanks, Brenna.
Yeah.
For you too, how do you think that playing soccer your whole life, I mean, some people like me, I played soccer through high school, but then I was done after that. But I do very much still think that the things that I learned through the sport helped me in doing my career and just everyday life. So how do you think that playing the game shaped the way that you now do front office duties?
Sure. Man, soccer is such a unique game in the fact that it is such a global sport. And it was something that when I was really young, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have traveled with it. So when I was 12 years old, I made, there was this thing called the Fox Kids Cup. It no longer goes on anymore, but it was this, they picked like 10 kids out of each country around the world and did like a mini World Cup with it. It was the first time I was sent, on a plane by myself, went to Spain. We lived with these other teams. We lived with these, I remember like Paraguay, and we had teams from Israel, and we had teams from France, and, we were all staying in where the Olympic Village was. And it was the first time that I had a chance to talk to other kids who had these experiences that were like so different from my own. And yeah, I mean, because of that, my worldview just in like one experience, became so much bigger. And then from there, my love of the sport and love of the game became like, oh, I had an opportunity to travel. I had an opportunity to see these other pieces of life that I would have never been able to had I just, had I not played sports. And so, yeah, I mean, that for me was really like, I think the biggest thing that helped shape me was that there's something else out there besides just me and like where I'm living in this space right here. And I think because of that, I was always moving. I always called myself a nomad. It was like seeking something else, seeking other experiences, learning to talk to people. And just, I think that those things made me a better leader, a better listener, a better teammate, and I think have helped push me as now, like as a mother, and in the things that I'm doing now.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, when we come back, because there is so much more to talk about, we're talking more about the Aurora, the league that it's a part of, the success we've seen, and the transition of women's sports when we come back. Welcome back, everybody. If you missed our first segment, we are celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and right now we have Danny Young with us. She's the VP of Sponsorships for the Minnesota Aurora. We're talking all about your career, all about your soccer career, and now we will get into some rugby as well. But for now, we're going to talk about the Aurora a little bit. For you, we were talking about this before we started recording. It's such a different world here in the Twin Cities when it comes to the support for women's sports, I feel like, than a lot of the major cities, unfortunately, in the United States. When you went to your first Aurora game, what were your thoughts?
I honestly was blown away. Again, I feel like I've been a part of so many conversations, even in, quite honestly, the professional in the current NWSL, when it first started, we played in high school football stadiums. We played where there wasn't locker rooms. We played on fields that, where 100 people maybe came to the game. And that was as a professional league. So when I was at first approached to go to an Aurora game, but to be a part of Aurora, I was like, I've heard this story before.
Yeah.
And I've seen it fall flat on its face. And it's, this is really cool, but I'm not willing to put myself out there right now because honestly, I was a little bit burned by the sport where, I was a professional athlete, but was not paid as such. I was not able to make a living off of that. And so, going back to it and then seeing that 7,000 people came to a game and that there was this really professional atmosphere and people were buying merch and buying jerseys and wanting to support. I was honestly blown away. I actually was like, what is happening here? What is this place? Minnesota is a unique place for sure. And I'm not from here, but now I am for sure a Minnesotan because of it.
I was telling you how one of my first assignments was going to an Aurora game when I first moved here and I got the job. And I was also blown away by the attendance. And I also was blown away by, it wasn't just this like one-time thing. I think sometimes people think when it comes to things like the Aurora or the PWHL, sure, they're going to show up for the first game, sure, this, that, and the other because they're excited, but people are not going to consistently keep coming back to this. But they couldn't be more wrong in that sense. People consistently go to PWHL. When I showed up to that Aurora game, we were mid-season at this point. So it wasn't like it was just this one-off, people wanted to come out because somebody was playing or this, that, and the other. It was because people genuinely wanted to be there. They wanted to spend their Friday night out at TCO watching their home team, put the beat down on somebody else because let's be honest, the Aurora are pretty good at what they do. For you too, when you moved to Minnesota, you see this success. What does it mean for you to be a part of the foundation that's being laid for the traction that women's sports is getting right now?
Man, I love this question because I feel like there is so much power happening in the Twin Cities right now in the women's sports space. I mean, in the women's space in general, like you look around and there's executives that are women. There's the Minnesota United has Sherry Ballard and she's their CEO. Yeah. When I first learned that, once again, it was one of those moments where I was like, what is this place? I've never heard of a woman who works in the MLS like that. And so again, it was just one of those moments where I'm like, this is a really cool place. And I think that now with the success of PWHL, you have the Lynx, who is one of like the original, WNBA teams, or has been around for so long. You now have rugby popping up here. I think that, it's just been amazing to see the growth and the support that, everyone has come out to show, like, the Lynx last season in their championship run, that stadium being filled, to the brim and people being so excited about it. It's just been, it's been so powerful to be a part of. I think for me, it's been the biggest thing. I've always looked at working in sports as, how am I going to make a living off of this? Right. And I think I've been forced to ask that question because as an athlete and as a coach, it was so hard, even though it was the thing that I loved doing. I just was not able to see a way to support my family on that. Right. And now things have changed and now I can be on the administrative side and really like make a living for my family and for myself and make a career that I'm really proud of. And so it's not just like, we're making the space in this very professional environment for the athletes and the coaches themselves, but also for the people who want to work in sports. For me, that's the most exciting part about it is that we can't shy away from talking money. We can't shy away from talking about the investment in women's sports and what the return on investment and engagement is. And that is where all of it is elevated. And I think Minnesota is a place that there's a lot of big companies. There's a lot of people who are, who come from the investment space and who are investing in, the NFL and the NBA and all of and MLB. Like we have every team. And now that shift is being made into women's sports and how exciting. That's what we all want, right? So, yeah.
I love that you said that too, because I think sometimes, I know, because I am a woman. So often as women, we put ourselves into a corner and we also are afraid to ask for what we want. How do you think that this transition for women's sports, in a good way, is teaching young women, maybe even before they start their careers, that it's okay to ask for what you deserve? How do you think that the way that women's sports is going right now is helping young women in that sense?
I honestly am so excited to see where women's sports are at in 20 years. And the reason I think about this, I was actually thinking about this just recently. If you think about, where women were in sports 20 years ago, they didn't, a lot of them, they were playing in men's leagues.
Right.
A lot of times they didn't have, and this is like on the youth side, right? They didn't even have women's teams to play on. So they were playing in men's teams. Maybe you were the only girl on a team. Okay. There was no professional players for you to look at. They were really the first even pushing, okay, we should have teams. Then you look at the next generation, it was, okay, they're gonna be the first to have a professional team. And they were, kind of wearing that hat as, I won't get paid. Maybe I don't get paid at all, but at least we have a team and like a professional space. Maybe I'm getting paid very, very little amount, and then you look where we are now, where it's like, okay, now players are starting to make salaries that are really good.
Right.
Or, they're not men's professional salaries, but at least they're solid salaries. And now I think these women are coming through seeing, oh, I can make a living. I can ask for my value. I don't feel like I'm stuck with just this dollar amount over my head that is not going to be something I can live on.
Yeah.
And now I see opportunities of working, front office. I see spaces that I can be in. And so all of the pieces that come along with being a part of a team, leadership, you see all of these women executives, 97% of them played sports when they were growing up. It's like this mentality of confidence that you can and that you should be in the room. I think sports are a part of that, but now they're able to turn around and say, oh, I also can make a living off of it. And I also can see, that I have a future in this sport. And for me, that's something that we're just scratching the surface on.
It's only just beginning. When we do come back, we're going to talk more about this, but we're also going to talk about rugby, because Dani is getting into the rugby space and it's very exciting. So all of that and more to come when we get back. Welcome back, everybody. If you missed it, we are celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day. So we're sitting down with a ton of women here in the Twin Cities that work in the sports space. And right now we have Dani Young, VP of Sponsorships for the Aurora. We've been talking about a lot of soccer, but let's talk about rugby. What is your involvement with the sport of rugby right now?
Well, honestly, I am just on the periphery. I am just kind of contracting with the league that's coming out right now. It's called the WER Women's Elite Rugby. It is just starting. And honestly, I am just dipping my toe in right now. So kind of figuring out what the space is all about. And Minnesota is going to get a team. The Twin Cities are going to get a team. So when I saw that, I was like, I should see what's going on here.
Yeah.
I should, being in soccer and all of the women's sports teams here really like to lift each other up and support each other. So I just reached out, and now I'm kind of contracting with the league and seeing how it's all going to go.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
What got you interested in rugby?
Quite honestly, the Olympics, yes. Yeah. I mean, how could you not after that run and their first bronze medal? That was incredible. But I actually do have a friend who I played soccer with growing up. She also happened to play ice hockey and played on the national team, both in soccer and in hockey for the youth national team. She was amazing.
So every 2 years she was at one of the Olympics?
Yeah. So, well, she wasn't on the full national teams, but youth national teams, yes.
Yeah,
so like they have, they have like
What?
mini World Cups. Yeah, she was incredible. Her name's Lev Kelter. And then when she got out of hockey, she actually made the transition into rugby. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll support you in this, and followed her career. And then the Olympics came around, Ilona Maher came around, and now, rugby is like top of everybody's mind. So obviously also with the money from Michelle Kang into USA Rugby, I was like, all right, this is a space to watch. So yeah.
We've seen the traction that the W is getting right now. We've seen the traction that women's soccer is getting right now. So if you're wondering where you should be putting your money, it's women's sports. And rugby is the next thing. So if you get in now, give it a few years and you will get your return.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. I mean, I feel that I feel that rugby is where soccer was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's a global sport. People overseas watch it. It's been a very big attendance thing. You know, you look at New Zealand rugby, they have like their haka dance. It's something that goes viral all the time. It's very followed in England, and I feel like that's actually how soccer was a long time ago, and then nobody really watched it here in the US. And now, you know, now look at where soccer is. So I'm really excited to see where the future of rugby is.
And get your young girls involved in rugby too, if you have the opportunity. I know it's so new, but if you do have the opportunity, and especially girls that are playing soccer and hockey are very aggressive sports as it is. Rugby is also a very aggressive sport. I do want to talk to you about as well, because I started following rugby a little bit when it came to the Olympics, because Ilona Maher really has been a trailblazer in U.S. women's rugby. Can you talk to me about her and just the impact that you've seen from her play and her personality too? Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting to see how important getting to know the athletes are in the attraction to a sport. She has been so amazing in the way that she has been outspoken about what her value is, how strong she shows up, you know, in literally what looks like the blink of an eye. But really it's because she's been preparing her whole life for this moment, and she's just rising to the occasion. I think that for me is what speaks so much power into it, is that she, you know, you see this one moment of Ilona Maher, but really that's been, you know, her whole life. And I think that that's where we as women in sports like have all had to be. You know, you have to put the work in, you have to do all of the things that you do to get to where you are without anybody watching. And then the day comes, it's game day, and you show up, and then everybody all of a sudden knows your name. That's her, and she has risen to that moment. And for me, that's been so powerful to see. On top of that, like, rugby is a very intense sport. It's different than, you know, as somebody who's never played rugby, it's just now going and watching it, I'm like, this is very different than a lot of other sports. They are, you know, it's very, very physical. You know, the character and the interest in somebody wanting to play rugby, like, I don't really particularly want to play that sport. But if that's something that is really like interesting to you, I mean, amazing, because it is such a physical game in that way. And yes, it comes with all of the other things. Like, you're in a group of women who also share that same mentality, right? So it's this really, it's just this really, really cool, different niche that I have come to be a part of and am really coming to love, for sure. One other thing that I really loved about Ilona Maher, I saw sit down with her recently, and the interviewer, which is something that I would ask, but I thought she gave such a wonderful answer to it. They said, "Do you ever suffer from imposter syndrome?" And she said, "No, I don't have that. I know how hard I've worked. I know what I've done to get where I'm at." And like you said, we've seen a flash in the pan of Ilona Maher so far, but it's only just begun for her, but it has been her entire life too. How do you think sports and being a professional athlete has helped you, because imposter syndrome is something that a lot of women suffer from, has helped you in your confidence in what you do with the success of your career so far? I mean, I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of women just have in their careers in general also, because again, when you don't look around and see, you know, at least like half the spaces out there being filled by women just as they are being filled by men, then it becomes, okay, I have to be one of those 1 or 2 women rather than one of the 5, 6, 7, 8 women in that room. Right? And so that becomes such a smaller, like, you have to be that much more perfect to be able to be one of those very, you know, small amount of women sitting in the highest levels. I say the same for sports. For me, when I look at what it meant to be a professional athlete, I sometimes still feel like, you know, I didn't get paid as a professional athlete. I didn't make the same amount of money. And so for me, being a professional athlete, I feel like still carries a different word than somebody who played, you know, on the men's professional sports space. But hearing Ilona Maher say that and speak it into the universe, now again, it transcends onto the ears of the young women growing up now, being like, oh, there's a whole team doing this. There's a whole league doing this. There's women who feel really confident and are saying, I don't just have to be one of those 2 women. I can be, one of this whole group of women. And so for me, that was what really, really resonated with me when she said that. And I hope so many people heard that and really felt aligned with that.
We've only scratched the surface of the glass ceiling so far, but I very much think that people like you and just the Twin Cities has done such a good job of laying the foundation that we've only just begun when it comes to women having opportunities and feeling confident and comfortable in the opportunities that they get to. So thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us and celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.